BMW has really surprised me lately. The models that I expected to blow my mind ended up being really disappointing. And then the models I had low expectations for ended up surprising me by being so good. And that's kind of the story with this BMW X6. I had really low expectations, but I ended up being really impressed, and I'm going to tell you why.
For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that.
So the BMW X6 was completely overhauled for 2024. So besides a lot of visual changes, this SUV also gets a lot more standard features and also some pretty significant powertrain upgrades. So this is the M60i version that I'm driving, and it's powered by a 4.4 liter twin turbo V8 engine. It's one of my favorite BMW engines right now, and it puts out 523 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque, which is plenty. All-wheel drive is, of course, standard, and the transmission is an 8-speed automatic, and that transmission actually comes with its own electric motor now. So that's one of the other most significant changes for the X6 for this year, is that it now comes standard as a mild hybrid. So mild hybrids aren't like traditional hybrids where they're going to significantly impact your fuel economy, but it does come with a lot of benefits. So number one is that it really increases smoothness and refinement. So it smooths out the shifts in the transmission so you can barely feel them working. It also really smooths out the stop-start system so you can't feel it, which is amazing. It also enables the climate control to continue running if the engine is stopped, if you're waiting at a light or something. It also enables an electric power boost, which shouldn't impact your fuel economy at all. And one more thing it does is that it allows you to coast longer on EV power when you're in Eco Pro mode. So it will help your fuel economy a little bit, but not a lot. So speaking of fuel economy, this is rated to get 12.3 liters per 100 kilometers combined, which isn't amazing, but it is an improvement from last year's model, which is rated at 13. So that's why I was saying that this mild hybrid helps, but not a whole bunch. Otherwise, I've been super impressed by this powertrain. It has not missed a single beat. It just delivers every single time and is always on point. And that's exactly what a BMW should be like. Another big upgrade is that the X6 now comes standard with 4-wheel steering, which is really welcome because this is a big, heavy SUV, and honestly, it needs all the help that it can get to corner as confidently as it does. So the 4-wheel steering helps the SUV feel a lot smaller than it actually is, and a lot more nimble as well. So you'll feel it out on these corners like I'm in right now, but it'll also make it easier to park, which is really well appreciated as well. In comfort mode, the X6 is actually pretty mellow and it's great for cruising. I do think it still rides a little bit harshly over rough roads and stuff. I think that's mostly due to these huge 22-inch wheels and these very low profile run flat tires. If you did want a cushier ride, you could opt for the air suspension. I drove the air suspension in the X5 and I absolutely loved it. So that's definitely an option for you. But when you put it into sport mode, everything turns red because red means fast. And honestly, it gets so much more animated and has so much more personality in this mode. Everything just gets a little bit sharper and a little bit more responsive. And it also sounds really good. Ooh, I love that. That's why I love this V8. It is just so magical. So in true BMW fashion, the X6 does tackle corners very confidently. I wish there was a bit more feeling in the steering and a little bit more feedback to make it more engaging. But what's impressed me the most about the X6 is how well it balances both luxury and sport. Usually SUVs can do one and not the other, but this one balances both really well without making too many compromises, which I love to see. But it's not all perfect. One thing that I did want to point out is that I think the X6 has terrible visibility. So this coupe-like profile looks very cool, but it really means that it's hard to see out the back. Dan would call that rear window a mail slot. Also, these tiny little windows make it very hard to see out of. These pillars are very thick, and the placement of those side mirrors means that there's a giant blind spot when you're going forward. And also, this chunky pillar makes it almost impossible to see anything during a shoulder check. So that's not good. Luckily, the X6 now comes with a whole bunch of more standard safety features that help, like the blind spot monitoring and all the sensors. But I really think visibility is underrated, and automakers have to do a better job with that. So another upgrade the X6 got for 2024 is that it's now available with this advanced driver assistance program, which is basically like a really good adaptive cruise control. The only difference is that now it allows you to drive hands-free on certain stretches of divided highway. So I can't demonstrate it for you right now because we're not on one of those accepted roads, but I've tried it and it actually works really well, and it's very good at communicating with the driver on what it sees and what obstacles it sees, which gives me an added level of comfort on driving without hands. Because honestly, it takes a lot of trust to do that, but I feel very confident that this BMW knows exactly what it's doing. And using that system doesn't mean that you can pick up your phone and start scrolling. You know, you still have to pay attention and be ready to take over at any given time. I always want to point that out. You can't just take a nap with these systems. But I really like using it because it's very smooth and everything feels very natural, you know? The braking is smooth and progressive. It doesn't just slam on the brake and scare everybody. I really like this system. It's probably one of the best I've ever used. Another upgrade that I love is the new infotainment system. It is running BMW's latest system, which has actually become one of the industry's most user-friendly. So besides being able to use the touch screen, which is nice when you're parked, you also have the option of using this rotary dial to control it while you're driving, which is a lot less distracting, also because I can't reach this screen without leaning forward. So I like the option of using both. The menus are logical, the screen is crisp and responsive, everything makes sense, and this is honestly one of the most user-friendly systems I've experienced in the recent past. So now the infotainment system is also housed under a single piece of curved glass that shares that glass with the information cluster. I also really love this information cluster because it's fully digital now, which is really nice to see. It looks very luxurious and very clean and crisp. It also is great at just displaying a whole bunch of information to you so that it's easy to glance down at while you're driving, so it's not distracting at all. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are now standard, and it's really well integrated too. So if I'm using Google Maps navigation, I can see the instructions both in the head-up display and the information cluster. And that's great because then I could use something else like the Sirius XM radio and not have to toggle back and forth, which is less distracting to use. I also really like that this infotainment system has a home button and a back button. It seems really simple, but it's amazing how many automakers don't include those simple touches that make things way more user-friendly. I do wish there were more physical buttons for the climate control system. Right now, everything you have to access through the infotainment system, which is fine because really it's never more than 1 or 2 taps away. I just really prefer having physical buttons for that because it's easier, but since everything is so easy to find on this, it's really not a deal breaker. So in essence, the X6 is kind of like a coupe version of the X5. And what that means is that it has that sloping roofline. And you would really choose the X6 over the X5 if you prioritize style over practicality. But that doesn't mean that the X6 is completely useless in that department either. I'm actually really impressed by how practical this SUV is. So even with that sloping roofline, our video producer, Will Johnson, is back there. He's got plenty of legroom and headroom, which is awesome. The seats also fold in a 40-20-40 split, which is great because the middle part can fold down independently and you can put some skis in there and still have room for 4 people. I also really love that the door pockets are huge. It fits my big water bottle and my bag, which is great. One downside is that I think the lift-over height in the trunk is a little bit high, and I actually find the X6 a little bit difficult to get in and out of because the side comes out so much, and that's going to be so annoying in the winter when it's covered with salt and slush and your pants are going to get so dirty. In terms of cargo capacity, there is a little bit less than the X5, but not a lot. There's about 600 liters worth of space with the rear seats up, and that expands to about 1,500 with them folded flat. And I think there's still plenty of room for all your stuff. So if practicality is one of your biggest concerns, go with the X5. If you want a bit more style and flair, the X6 is the one you want. So this M60i version I'm driving starts at $108,000. And with all of the options added in, it ends up being about $130,000, which sounds like a lot. But one thing I wish BMW did was add more things as standard to help make me feel better about spending that much money. So for example, I love these glass controls. I think they're gorgeous and I think every BMW should come with them. But they're part of like a $13,000 upgrade package. You know, that advanced driver assistance program that allows you to drive hands-free is about $2,500, which is not bad. And there's just a lot of expensive visual upgrades and cosmetic upgrades that I think add up to make it feel really good, like this carbon fiber, this leather, it's all beautiful. So it does feel worth the money, and the powertrain also is worth every single penny because I love this V8. To recap, I love the BMW X6's beefy powertrain, smoothness, and its user-friendliness. I'm not a big fan of the big blind spots or the expensive options. So going back to my introduction for just a second, I recently drove both the BMW XM and the M2, and those are both supposed to be shining stars for BMW in terms of performance. But I was actually really let down by both of them. And on the other side of the spectrum, when I drove the BMW X5 plug-in hybrid and the X1, I was super impressed, and that's the same story with this X6. My expectations were quite low, but I ended up really loving this SUV because it just does everything so well. So in what world are we living in where BMW's regular SUVs are more impressive than their performance models? I have no idea, but if you're in the market for an overachieving luxury SUV, BMW seems to be making a ton of them these days, including this X6.